everyone, it's Maria from Jardin Le Papier. Today I'm doing a flip through of a custom journal, St. Anthony of Padua. It's actually a collector's journal, so a lot of blank pages using Lokta paper, antique ledger paper from France, as well as antique book pages from various religious books. So I used an antique book, Vespers Roman Vespers from 1888. I didn't alter it, I did clean it and then just reinforce the spine, but I didn't want to rebuild the spine because I love this beautiful book label here. It measures about almost 8 3/4 across and 11 inches. So again, it's meant to hold a lot of artwork such as lithographs, and the spine I kept just under 2 inches. And for now, at least, it's not too alligator mouth. So I did use a lot of original pages from the book, including this end paper here of marbled paper. And all they had was a strip of tape binding it to the front cover. On the inside, I've lined with handmade Lokta paper and the original end papers, the marbled papers from the book. On the cover, you'll have an antique French prayer card, just bound here. And this comes from Catherine, French billet doux, and you'll find 8 or 9 prayer cards, antique prayer cards from Catherine in here. This is not yet glued to the front because I figured the owner could place a different prayer card on the very front, and I'll actually give him an envelope of supplies like double-sided tape, as well as some of these clear photo corners that I like to use. Since I did use a lot of the original pages from the Roman Vespers, I rebuilt the text block using traditional French twist as well as Coptic stitching. So there's 8 stitch holes per page. The only tab that I have in the whole book is this one here, because this is an antique charm and it has been blessed. And it's actually 2 saints, and even though it's a little too tiny, on one side is St. Anthony, and then on the other side is St. Rita. So what I'll do is I'll try to take a picture and enhance it on the screen for you. But this one is special and comes from France. I pictured the book to be basically 5 sections. St. Anthony's life and beginnings in Lisbon, a trip to Morocco after he becomes a Franciscan friar, his time in Italy, where he accidentally lands in Sicily and then makes his way to Tuscany and Bologna, or a part of Romagna, and then makes a side trip to Toulouse, Montpellier, Provence, all in the south of France, teaching before he finally lands in Padua. And then section 5 is about his sainthood and some of the miracles, as well as what he's a patron saint of. Extra 1888 ledger piece here, all from the same ledger page. A lot of antique papers. This one, is this German? I should have translated this before. But this is a very antique document, and I just love the textures. St. Anthony, this is actually a giant pocket, and this is about his life in Portugal. So I have this antique map from 1865, Portugal, Spain, and France, south of France here, which depicts most of his travels in his early life, as well as an antique prayer card, which I think is very fitting because the cross is our anchor. And of course, Lisbon, Portugal is a known seafaring town. This antique map is a little bit more brittle, and I didn't want to necessarily fold it just in case the owner wants to hang it up or frame it first. So I'm just going to place this aside. And this is an antique and blessed charm from Catherine, French billet doux. And I have it here on a paper clip so that the owner can decide where he'd like to put it in the book. Portugal is known for being a seafaring town, as well as for their artwork, their mosaic tiles. The tile work is called azulejo, and it's basically translation is shiny stone, and it was probably introduced in the 13th century. And And of course, Portugal is known for their colors blue and white. These tiles actually come off, and they have double-sided tape so that the owner can use them as tucks throughout. And then this one also comes off. This could be a tuck. This could be a pocket somewhere, and some antique ribbons from Ina at Exquisite Memory Journals. And then this is also a floating tuck. It's just a playing card. So this is just a little bit of paper that can be used as a journaling spot. A lot of empty space using the Lokta paper so that any of the lithographs can be placed anywhere. You'll find antique Italian book pages and vintage book pages from Roxy Creation, Rachel, throughout. And of course, this is a Franciscan monk. St. Anthony actually started out with the canons regular. Anyway, this was all happening circa 1210, 1211, 1212, known by this haircut here. I'll have to look up the word and flash it on for you, and their brown habit. St. Anthony is famous for being a preacher and a theologian. So he's always either pictured with a book, his white lilies, or the child Jesus. So this is by Marcantonio Bassetti. And Italian pages from Rachel, Roxy Creation. This section of a dogma, dissertation of Catholic Dogma, actually comes from a different seller on Etsy, but she was able to send me a few pages from her collection that she had. And I put another one of the French Catholic prayer cards from Catherine on here, and using smaller paper clips just so that I don't add bulk to the actual journal. So again, he is known for studying. A belly band using handmade marbled paper. And then I'll be placing tucks throughout that haven't been glued or sewn in yet. And so I have these here as tucks and pockets where there's an image from a children's reader and then a short 1 or 2 page summary of the image. The second section now is after he's transitioned as a Franciscan monk. He travels to Morocco. And this is actually where he spends only a little time because he gets ill. So here is a map. Marrakech, Morocco, Casablanca. And this is a French school page. So while in Morocco, he actually became ill, and he needed to make his way back to to Portugal. But his boat was actually misdirected. He landed in Sicily, but on his way back, I like this image only because it has a sickly look to him here. This is actually just a journal card, a very common fleur-de-lis image of Moroccan tile. It's a sack. You'll see a lot of antique book pages here depicting a lot of the stories from the Bible. And I thought they would make great backdrops. One, because of the natural water line that developed over time, kind of framing the images, but he could actually put his own lithographs over these or on the backside. A giant pocket here. And here's another antique prayer card from France, from Catherine. An Italian school report, I believe. I think this is now the 4th French prayer card from Catherine at French Billet Doux. And I will have some in your supply envelope. I keep referencing the supply envelope. It's actually this antique envelope that I've been keeping for years, not knowing what to do. Supplies, extra paper clips, stamps on a Belgian receipt page, extra fish playing cards or advertisement cards that can be used as tucks if you glue them down, or corners, for any of your lithographs or your prayer cards. Some of these clear corners, as well as 2 different sizes of double-sided tape, handmade Lokta paper that you can actually tear into smaller pieces as either labels for your different artworks that you'll be putting in here, and or tucks using your double-sided tape. When I told my aunt that I was making a St. Anthony of Padua journal, she actually collected from different church members that she works with cards and memorabilia that the friars send out to raise money. And she collected quite a few medallion and prayer cards. So I made medallions into bookmarks. And for the new owner, just so you know, she did make a nice donation to the friars. More Italian book pages. This here is actually just a free-floating supply that you can use or not. And you can use this as a backdrop for some of your own prayer cards. And this is an antique prayer card. Oh no, a prayer image from Catherine again. So if you look at the journal now that I've removed the antique map, the larger antique map, as well as this postcard backdrop, the journal itself doesn't have a lot of extras, even with the tab on the side. So it's because I reconstructed the spine to fit this, or the text block to fit the spine exactly. There's almost no room except for some lithographs and your prayer cards to add here. But it's a very simple, understated book. And there's the spine. And this is actually a section holding another antique map of Italy. And I was able to bind it in the book in time, but I did have to reinforce it with some acid-free tape, just so that it wouldn't tear. But it has a little section of Italy. I wish it was all Italy. To return to Portugal. So his ship leaves Morocco and tries to get back to Portugal, but is actually misdirected to Sicily. And then he makes his way to Tuscany from there. So even before getting to Padua, he does, get to Tuscany, stays there for a little while in a convent because he's so sickly that he makes his way to Bologna. And that's even a few years before he makes it to Padua, which is just west of Venice in the north. This is actually a public domain image of Padua. Piazza Salone in Padua. It's part of the Yale Center for British Art collection. I mentioned he actually goes to Tuscany first after Sicily and then is sent to Bologna for a time. And this is Bologna, also part of the Yale Center of British Art. There's over 150 pages. I lost count because there's so many smaller pages. Into Marseilles as well as Toulouse, University of Marseille and University of Toulouse to teach. Encyclopedia dictionary page. I wish everyone can feel how soft and amazing. This is actually my favorite section of the journal. It's blank, except for this antique French prayer card, again from Catherine, with a tiny little picture that's been glued on there. Actually looks like the cross. And part of the center cross is actually a floating bookmark where I've put some of the medallions that my aunt had collected and donated for this project. You still have the cross in the center. So I think it would be beautiful with two lithographs maybe. So you'll see this thread here that's hanging out of the book. That's what that's meant to kind of show you, so that if you remove this bookmark, you can still find the giant cross. So again, as he lands in Tuscany, he also takes some teaching jobs at the University of Toulouse, as well as the University of Marseilles. So these few Italian pages here are meant to be his school plans or his lecture plans, as well as theology notes that he shares. All of these come from Rachel at Roxy Creations, but these are some of my favorite antique Italian book pages that I usually paint on. Now we are into the section where St. Anthony actually gets ill in the year 1231 and dies that year. And he's actually made a saint less than a year, 11 months later. Part of the watercolor collection of Yale Center of British Art, again, painted or printed to just some art paper. This is actually printed to coffee stain paper, so it gives it a little darker silhouette. This is a little pocket prayer card that you can usually buy on the streets in Italy. I should have just bought a lot when I was there years ago, but it's a small little prayer plated piece that comes out, and it shows that it was made in Italy right there, I think. So St. Anthony died on June 13th. And in this Grand Magasin du Louvre from 1916 is actually June 13th. It's a Tuesday, feast day of St. Anthony of Padua, patron saint of marriage or finding your spouse. There's a few days leading up to the 13th and afterwards, either in Spain or France, I don't remember, where they celebrate couples. Just 11 months later, he's actually made a saint by Pope Gregory IX. So Sainthood 1232, May of 1232. Some miracles that he's really well known for. The first one is preaching to the fish in Rimini along the river. And that's why you'll actually see these Danish playing cards that I added that could be used as tucks and corners. Miracle of the Mule. This is painted by Anthony van Dyck circa 1627 to 1630, and this was also in Rimini. But the story goes that a starved mule is presented to the host on one hand, or fodder or food in another, and where will the starved mule go? It's said that the mule actually bowed before the host. It is of the man who murders his wife. After the man finds out she's actually innocent, the miracle is that St. Anthony comes back and revives her. I forgot to write down the artist, but I think it's Tizian, circa 1600s. I'll flash it up on the screen. But I can only imagine the owner's collection of lithographs. This is the cover, music sheet cover of the Standard Bearer, cards that my aunt collected for me. It's just a simple modern Thanksgiving prayer. And again, he is known as a patron saint to fishermen, to seafarers. I cut from France that I got from Sarah, Crafty Paper Bits. And I didn't know where to put it, but I think it would be nice if there was a prayer for the sailors and fishermen here. He's also the patron saint of lost items from the Cathedral of Rheims magazine. This Roman Vespers actually had pages also taped to it or glued to it, so it must have been altered by whoever owned it, because they added book pages or music sheet pages from 1859. what I did was, I still use the Lokta here, but this is the original binding tape that they used to bind a lot of the extra sections and or to repair some of the pages. So that's, oh, and there's some of it right there. If you're like me, I love to see what original books, how they were constructed, and to show original pieces. The back was very beat up, so you'll see though that I didn't want to seal it. I did seal the edges, excuse me, here, so that it would not continue to fray, so you'll actually notice a very hard edge. Here, sealed it with Mod Podge. So that's the flip through. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, I think just one digital, and really meant to hold the new owner's personal collection.